Hi, we are here to talk about the full stack developer program at Akrity and what exactly as a candidate you will be going through and what you will be learning and what are the different things that will be happening for you throughout this journey. So at Akrity, we are a team of full stack developers. We believe in being a very good generalist versus then being a specialist. So this is because we feel great careers and great technology leaders were built this way and we want to follow in the footsteps of the giants. So we have a saying at Akrity, you go where the feature goes. So the feature needs to be implemented on the front end, if it's need to be written on the back end, or if it's need to be written in the middleware, or if it needs to be probably a deployment script and needs to be deployed separately, you will be essentially having all these different responsibilities. We don't really take into consideration a lot on the lines of has this person done this before or not, but what we want to do is we want to give you enough support in ensuring that you can do all these tasks. So let's now look at these in more detail. So at the top of the list, we have Ruby on Rails. That is what we have chosen as a web application framework for this video. We work on other web application frameworks as well, but let's talk about Rails in this video. So when it comes to Ruby on Rails, we have six fundamental concepts that we would want you to go through, like understanding how routing works, what's executed on the client versus what's executed on the server, what are browsers, how do they work, understanding active gems. Active gem is a very popular gem of Ruby and this is just an example gem that we have taken, but you will be understanding a lot of different gems and how you can integrate that in your code base and go about it. Adding new views, understanding existing Rails applications, because as much as it's a skill to read and write new code, it's also a skill to read code that already exists, that has been written by developers before us. So after that, we would cover fundamentals of HTML, CSS and JavaScript. So in HTML, you would be talking about forms and validations and writing semantic HTML. What are the conventions? What are the best practices? Where should be writing your script as? Should be at the top of the page or the bottom of the page? How does it affect the loading? What are the different ways you can do that? You have SEO basics. How can you make a responsive web design? So probably you'll be using Bootstrap or you'll be using Tailwind or any responsive framework that is you want to use today, and you would be go around doing that. Then you have CSS, which talks a lot about the responsive design, and then we'd be talking about the JavaScript. To begin with, the JavaScript will be like understanding the basic syntax, understanding how DOM manipulation works, understanding ES6, what are the different modules, and how exactly you will be doing all these things at an application level. Once you have an overall idea of this, we feel that the next thing that you would do is also understanding how version control works, what are the different Git best practices, what are the ways you should be doing branching, what are the ways you should be doing stashing, how exactly can you improve your productivity using Git. You'd also be understanding how web security, the basics and fundamentals of web security, what is HTTPS, when should you do HTTPS, what is CORS, how can you avoid CORS errors, and what are OWASP security rules, and how exactly to implement that in your web application. You'll be talking about package managers, whether it's NPM and Yarn, you'll be integrating with one of them and going about doing that. You'd be understanding about build tools. Build tools are going to help you essentially build your modules, whether via Webpack or ESBuild or the tool that's popular at that point of time. We'd be adopting that, and some npm task runners to essentially run a few scripts, run a few tasks as part of your build process, and how exactly you can automate that and not having to redo that every time. You'd also be picking a front-end framework. Ideally it's between React or Angular. That's what's popular these days. But at Akrity, we have a very strong philosophy where we adopt the latest technologies as much as possible. For example, some time ago we would say Angular is the best because Angular's ecosystem was very mature and very good, but today we are more on the side of React, and we like to think that okay, probably let's pick up React because React has more developer communities around it and more npm packages that you'd want to use. These things will keep changing, but as a developer, what we believe is we should probably want to give you exposure to all these tools and let you choose which is the best tool in the project, and you would be going around doing that. If you go down the path of React, initially you would be writing states, understanding how to divide components, pushing up state, pushing down state, understanding these components and concepts, and then you would get into Redux, how to do a state management for a complex web application, and how can you write a page without refreshing, that the whole page keeps updating, like, you know, like for example the Facebook or Gmail, you never refresh the page but you keep interacting with the page and new thing keeps happening. So how exactly can you handle such a dynamic state in an application? So that would be probably done by Redux. You'd also understand a few OS and general knowledge and understandings, like how exactly the terminal works, how exactly the process management happens at a very base level, what are threads, what are concurrencies, and essential POSIX standards, then IO management, memory management. You'd also probably be working on some amount of to some amount you'd also be picking up a new language, and that could be on the lines of the back end or on the front end. On the front end, you would probably be understanding TypeScript, or you would probably on the back end you will be probably taking up Java or Go or Rust or whatever application that is very well relevant for the project that you're working on. The next thing would probably be on the lines of CI and CD. At Akrity, we have a philosophy where every time you want to make a release to the server is just one command that you run, and this one command should essentially have all the steps that you would want to execute present in the same place, so that you don't make any mistakes for having when you're doing the deployment and stuff like that. So it's important that developers deploy the builds, not the DevOps part of it, but while during development, so that they can get a good feel of understanding how their code is actually running on the server and where all the server is being deployed, what are these environment servers, what is an environment, it's made up of how many servers, what are the different servers responsible for, and how exactly does all these come together and give ultimately a web application or a app interface for the users. So the next, as part of all the other architectural patterns that you would be going, and design and development principles, you would be understanding what is dry. You would be understanding what exactly don't repeat yourself means. How can you use solid principles and write the code that you have? What are design patterns? How can you do design patterns? What are monolith apps? How can you do microservices? When is the right time to do microservices, and probably when is the right time to do monolith apps? So about databases, essentially we work with traditional RDBMSs like MySQL, SQLite, MariaDB, and the stuff of like that. On the NoSQL side, we work with Mongo, we work with Datomic, we work with Firebase. So these are generally the usual suspects that we have, and also on project to project, based on what exactly we want to do there, we also work with other databases. For example, say Redshift or Redis, or the columnar database from Amazon. We work on the ones that's based on the project. So this essentially is a full stack developer journey. We believe there are a lot of things to learn, and this is a good fundamental for you to get started off, and it gives you a great foundation how to become an amazing technology leader and lead the future for the world. So that's it from my side. Thank you for listening.